Hi everyone, this is Edie Summers, and I just wanted to check in and see how you're feeling and doing. And I wanted to share some of my experience lately and how it relates to finding balance again, self-care, practicing self-care, and building that resilience. I really do believe that creating resilience and finding balance through practicing self-care is one of the best ways to feel better overall, avoid burnout, even manage symptoms from a chronic condition. And there's so many ways and reasons to practice self-care. For a long time, I was working for other people in a very intense capacity. I was also commuting for a couple of hours, 5 days a week. So that was about 10 hours a week just commuting. And I was doing some really intense jobs. I'm not gonna go into too much of the details of what the jobs were, but they were kind of like an intensive care type, kind of helping people improve their health and well-being, but in a very intensive situation. And after 3 years of doing that, plus the commute, I was actually kind of burned out before that, I would say. But that really threw my body off. And for those of you who don't know, I am the author of the book, The Memory of Health, and I developed chronic fatigue in my early 20s, and I had to learn how to really show up for myself because of that and practice really deep self-care. And I did achieve balance in my early 20s. It took me some time to figure it out, but I've had some other crashes since then, whether it's due to being in grad school or having to work really difficult jobs, and again, maybe having a commute in addition to that. I have a tendency to push myself and be a perfectionist. And so having that background of having to deal also with, needing to improve my health because of having maybe more issues with developing chronic fatigue, things like that. And also having been through some trauma, which I think can contribute to energy issues for people or different chronic conditions or chronic or symptoms. I've had to learn a lot, and I've learned a lot about what helps to lessen symptoms in the body and avoid burnout. And I'm always just looking to pass what I've learned along to you. So again, I did write a book. It's called The Memory of Health, and the subtitle is A Journey to Wellbeing. And it's very comprehensive. I do cover a lot of self-care tips in there, and I do talk a lot about energy and chronic fatigue. I also talk a lot about resilience, including traumatic resilience, kind of how you can bounce back from having gone through trauma. But today I just wanted to talk a little bit about finding balance again and really practicing self-care, and how that both of those kind of the intention to find balance and really making sure that you're showing up for yourself on a daily basis by practicing self-care, whatever that means to you, whatever self-care looks like for you, how that can create resilience in your body and mind and spirit and heart as well. So for me, recovering from the last several years of having just a very, very intense schedule, um, it really took my body a while to bounce back. And I would say it took me a good month and a half to 2 months. And I really had to, this has always been the case in the past too, right? Like it's kind of figuring out what your body needs in the moment and then honoring that. So it's really paying attention to your needs, your body's needs, and your own rhythms, and then giving yourself the permission to follow through on what your body needs. That's what made a really big difference for me. And sometimes it does mean having to alter your schedule or say no to things. Now, I'm kind of an introvert too, so it's really important also to stay connected. There are so many different parts to self-care and also resilience. Community and connections, relationships are a big part of it as well. It's what you eat also. It's managing stress levels for sure. Stress is a really big part of managing stress is a really big part of self-care. And I know it can be difficult. I think for, whatever your situation is, whether you're a professional, executive entrepreneur, or maybe you're someone who has a chronic condition, or maybe you have a combination of things going on, or maybe you're taking care of children, and for whatever reason you're looking to find more balance and practice more self-care and create more resilience for yourself in your mind, body, heart, and spirit. Everyone is going to have different tactics that work for them, but managing stress is usually a big part of it. And it can be challenging, right? Because there's always going to be stress involved in life. And again, sometimes you have to create stronger boundaries and literally do less. I had to do that for, again, a good month and a half, just so my body could really get more rest. And I think my kind of cortisol levels were flipped, and I was having more trouble sleeping. And I find that even though it's not always easy to do the things that you need to do to take care of yourself, it really pays off, because when you find that balance again, it's worth it. And balance is everything. And I'm a big believer in dynamic balance. So I talk a lot about that in my book. It's not about finding this perfect balance where you're not doing anything or there's no stress at all. That doesn't really exist. But it's about creating a dynamic balance where, you know, you are, every day is going to be a little bit different, but you do want your body to have that upper edge where that you have extra reserves and you're sleeping well. And I know that can be difficult, depending on your situation. Now, I do work with people who have chronic conditions and people who struggle with chronic fatigue and even CFS. And I am addressing you as well in this video, as well as other people who might be trying to avoid burnout, or maybe you have burnout, whether that's from working too much, or maybe you're feeling burned out from having a chronic condition, having just the constant stress of dealing with symptoms. Self-care applies to either any of those situations. How do we show up for ourselves? First of all, how can we create the intention to show up for ourselves? And a lot of times you have to reset the intention, right? If you go through some really major stressful events, like for me, again, it was just way too much work, way too much commuting. And honestly, it was too much for me to commit to in the first place, but I had to in the moment. So, but I have now made choices that align. You know, at some point you kind of come to the realization that well-being really is a factor, and you can make choices based on what's most important to you in your life. And for me, now all of us, of course, want to feel good and feel as well as we can, and sometimes sometimes we can't make choices. Sometimes it's just choosing between the least of the most difficult situation, right? Whether that's in terms of work or something else. But I believe it does make a difference to set the intention to really choose what's most important to you and focus on that, even if it's one thing or a few things. And for me, I had to make choices and then act upon those choices. And one of them was that my well-being is non-negotiable. And that did lead me to make some different choices in the last little while. I had to say goodbye to a commute and a job. I loved the community of the people I was working with, but I was giving too much and I wasn't giving enough to myself, if that makes sense. And it was depleting me, and I already need to practice more self-care than the average person. I already need more downtime than the average person. So I was giving too much, and I wasn't able to recuperate from that, if that makes sense. So reconnecting to one of my biggest values, which is my well-being and my own well-being, has started to make a difference for me. And as a result, I've made different choices in my career, and it's always an evolving process, right? Like the choices that we make, but it's really important to have kind of that North Star of like, what is your purpose and what's most important to you? What are your most important values? And then how can you craft your life around those values and your vision as much as possible? So now for me, I was having a lot of trouble sleeping in the last few months, but I've started to sleep better, and sleeping better really does make a huge difference. So that comes down to when we talk about self-care and sleep. Um, there are many components to self-care. There's how you eat, there's how you sleep. It's the people, it's the community that's around you, the people that you engage with, making sure you have people to engage with. Movement and exercise, if you're able. Those are some of the components of self-care, and then stress management. Sleep is a really big part of it because it's kind of the foundation for everything else. And I know how hard it is and how difficult it is when you're not sleeping well, because that absolutely translates to not feeling well during the day. It makes it that much harder to bounce back from stress. It can really contribute to chronic fatigue or low energy. It can make symptoms flare up if you have chronic conditions. It can make your burnout feel worse. It really depletes your reserves, right? And of course, good nutrition can also really up your reserves as well. But if I had to talk about some of the ways that I started to find balance again and practice more self-care and build that resilience, I would say that for me, I definitely noticed that sleeping better was a huge part of it. And a lot of times we can't control how well we're going to sleep. And believe me, I know that very well. I'm going to share some of the tips around what helped me to sleep better. And again, it was a process because my body was out of balance from pushing so much and giving so much, from the commute and from the type of work I was doing, in a service position, in a care, kind of in a intensive care situation, acute care. I was just very depleted, and I was having trouble sleeping. Like I said before, my cortisol patterns were kind of flipped, and I was probably more tired during the day and sort of more awake and having a harder time kind of decompressing at nighttime. And part of it was just slowing down enough and not doing as much for quite a while. Again, it took me about a month and a half. Not having as much on my plate and doing that on purpose helped my body to start to decompress. And over time, I was able to sleep better. I really tried to focus on nutrition and also managing my stress during the day, because that can influence how you sleep at night. I am a big fan of using supplements too. So I was using different supplements, like a very, very small microdose of melatonin, valerian, GABA. There are several things that I use, and I mentioned a lot of the tactics that I use for sleep and nutrition and self-care in my book, The Memory of Health. It started to make a difference. I would say if it's one thing that made a difference for me in starting to get my balance back this last time, it was getting better sleep. And again, I know that that's not always easy to do, and sometimes it feels like it's never ending. And in the CFS communities and people with chronic fatigue, I know that it can be an ongoing issue that seems to never resolve itself. But actually, sleep issues have really become a big issue for a lot of people these days. A lot of people are having trouble sleeping, and I really do believe a lot of it is because we are so out of balance and we're not practicing enough self-care, and there's too much going on. We're doing too much. We're completely overstimulated. Our brains are overstimulated. There's so much content out there. There's so much on the web, and we're constantly being asked to look at something, react to something. It's creating way too many dopamine hits in our brain. We're getting kind of that reward system in our brain is getting activated way, way too much, and we don't have the normal amount of downtime that we used to have to sort of process life and decompress. Get outside, take a walk in nature, or just, do nothing. I'm a huge fan of doing nothing. Now, for someone who is a perfectionist, and so I do love to achieve things. However, I'm a huge fan of doing nothing as well, because I think that we really need it, especially in this day and age, to decompress. And, there is also so much going on in the world. We have so many things happening, natural disasters, and tensions are high, and it's I think that sometimes stress can come from also just kind of absorbing all of that and not being able to decompress from that. And make sure you're getting the support that you need, whether that's professional support or support of loved ones or friends, community. That's also very, very important. I would say that, really take the time to slow down and tune in, check in with yourself. Really, really be honest with yourself about what you need. And, I believe that your body is really good at talking to you and communicating with you, along with your soul, your heart. All of these parts of yourself are very, very good, I believe, at communicating with you. They all have their own voices. It's really just a matter of us being able to slow down enough and kind of get rid of the noise around us, right? All the distractions, so that we can really, really check in and be present with ourselves enough to honor what our bodies need, and whatever that might be. And so I really wish that for you. These are some of the things that worked for me, and I really wish that for you, that you start to find more balance in your life and practice more self-care, whatever that looks like for you, and really start to create more resilience for yourself. And feel free to reach out to me on any channel. You can DM me or IM me. You can look for my book as well. The Memory of Health is available on Amazon. It is available as an ebook on Amazon. If you're part of Kindle Unlimited, you can add it to your queue. And if you're part of Kindle Unlimited, then it's, of course, free for you to read on there as an ebook. Of course, you can find the physical copy as well on Amazon, or on my favorite site, lulu.com, where it was published. You can get it in color there, and it's really nice to look through it that way. And I go through a lot of theories of not only chronic fatigue, but CFS in there, but also tons of ways to improve your energy and find balance, create more resilience, practice self-care, practice deep nutrition. And I go over a lot of theories of, what might be causing symptoms for you if you have a chronic condition, whether it's due to CFS or MS or RA, lupus. I do address burnout a little bit, and it's really just a book that's designed to be a memoir on well-being and also a guide to well-being. It took me 10 years to write, and so that's there at your disposal. And again, you can reach out to me on, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, which is now X, I believe. So I'm on a lot of those sites. I'm contemplating TikTok. I'm contemplating it. Maybe Reddit, I don't know, we'll see. But I am on a lot of the social media sites, and we actually have some really great groups and Facebook pages as well. On Facebook, there's a page actually called Self-Care Central. If you're looking to join other people who are really focused on their self-care. We have a private group. Well, we have a group. It's not private, but a group on Facebook that is connected with Self-Care Central. It's called Burned Out to Breakthrough. So you can join us in there, and that focuses a little more on burnout, mostly because of having mostly burnout due to work. But again, I have researched and read that burnout can also be a product of chronic illness, like just being burned out from having symptoms, constantly dealing with symptoms. And I do believe that practicing self-care can really help to minimize symptoms. It can make a difference. So I wish that for you as well. We also have some really great groups and pages on Facebook. If you do have chronic fatigue, we have a page on there called Chronic Fatigue Support. It has 25,000 plus people on there, really great support. And there is also a corresponding private group on Facebook, also called Chronic Fatigue Support, or something very similar to that name. If you type in Chronic Fatigue Support in groups, it should come up. And you can be an anonymous member in there. You can post anonymously. It's private. It's designed for people that need it to be private, because sometimes when we were talking about very sensitive subjects, whether it's chronic fatigue or CFS, or any sensitive subject related to that, people just want their privacy, and some people do post anonymously in there. So, but you can get the support that you need. So feel free to join us in those groups. And again, I just wanted to wish you well, wish you more well-being and balance, and hoping that you can find ways to practice more self-care. I'm also wishing you better sleep. Again, I know that's such an issue for so many of us, and I do believe that there are ways to improve sleep. Again, watch your stress levels during the day. Maybe try to not do as much for a while to give your body that time to decompress. Again, I'm a huge fan of sleep supplements. Valerian's great, GABA's great. They have now shown in research that with melatonin, it's microdoses that work best. And it will start to actually kind of kick in your own melatonin as well if you take a microdose. So I have a supplement formula called Sleep that works super, super well for me. It has a microdose only of melatonin in it, plus very small amount of GABA and valerian, works super well for me. Also, you can consider something like adaptogens. Adaptogens are really good for balancing out your stress response system. So if your system is getting out of whack from too much stress, then adaptogens like reishi, ginseng, valerian, if you take that at nighttime, there are so many adaptogens out there, but they literally help your body adapt to stress. And one of my favorites is reishi, but I do use valerian at nighttime as well. That's also an adaptogen. I talk a lot about adaptogens and other stress and sleep support in terms of supplements and self-care tips in my book, The Memory of Health. And thank you so much for listening today. I hope that you can start to create that resilience in your mind, body, heart, and spirit today. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.